This is Djibouti, a small country located at the top corner of Africa with a population of only 1 million. Very few people in the Western world know about Djibouti, but Djibouti is one of the most important, dangerous, and hot geopolitical country in the world, because all the powerful countries of the world have military bases here. If you look at the map of Djibouti, you will see an American military base here, which is the only American military base on the entire African continent. Similarly, there are 2 French military bases here, and right next to the French base is the Japanese military base, which is Japan's only foreign military base in any country. Next to Japan, on this side, is the Italian military base. Similarly, there is also a French naval base here, with German and Spanish soldiers camps right next to it. And then on the opposite side, there is a large Chinese naval base as well. Similarly, the governments of India, Russia, and Saudi Arabia are also negotiating with the Djibouti government to set up military bases over there. So, in a nutshell, Djibouti might be the only country in the world with so many military bases, and this raises the question that what is so special about Djibouti that all the major superpowers have set up their military bases here? Let's find out the answer to this question in today's video. Now, Djibouti's importance lies in its geographic location. Djibouti is located directly opposite of Yemen, to the west of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait is a narrow 28-kilometer passage through which all the sea vessels coming from the Indian Ocean enter the Red Sea, cross the Suez Canal, and then exit into the Mediterranean Sea, from where they reach all the European countries. So basically, this is the shortest route connecting Asia and the Middle East to Europe, and this makes it extremely geopolitically important, especially when we talk about oil and gas supply. 10% of the world's oil and 6% of natural gas supply pass through this 28 kilometers choke point, and all this gas and oil come from the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf is the body of water surrounded by Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Oman. This Persian Gulf region produces nearly 1/3 of the world's oil and holds over half of the world's crude oil reserves, as well as around 40% of the world's natural gas reserves. All these countries possess 50% of the world's oil and 40% of the world's total natural gas reserves. And this is why the Persian Gulf is the most important geographic location of the 21st century, because half of the world's energy supply depends on this region. Oil and gas from these countries are loaded onto oil tankers, which then pass through this 20-mile choke point to reach all major Asian countries like Pakistan, India, China, South Korea, and Japan. Similarly, the rest of the oil and gas passes through the Arabian Sea, enters the Indian Ocean, crosses the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and through the Suez Canal, it reaches European countries. According to 2022 statistics, 20% of Europe's oil imports and 24% of its gas imports pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And that is why if this strait is blocked for any reason, European economies will face a severe financial crisis, because then there will be only one route to Europe, which is so long that it crosses the entire African continent. This not only takes more time and money, but is also quite dangerous. Something similar happened in March 2021 when a ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, causing a loss of $9.6 billion to the world economy. But the country for which this strait is most important is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia possesses 15% of the world's proven oil reserves. Saudi Arabia is literally a petro-state. 46% of Saudi Arabia's GDP depends on oil, and 80% of its export income comes from oil. All of this infrastructure, these large buildings, these impressive projects, and this luxurious lifestyle, everything is because of oil. And all of Saudi Arabia's oil fields are located near the Persian Gulf border, and that's why the easiest way to get this oil to the rest of the world is through this Strait of Hormuz. Now, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, it is a narrow 34-kilometer passage through which the containers from the Persian Gulf countries pass to reach the rest of the world. The biggest threat to this choke point comes from Iran, which is Saudi Arabia's biggest rival. All the islands around this strait are also under Iran's control, and Iran has often threatened to close this strait. To mitigate this risk, the Saudis have built a 1,200-kilometer long pipeline from Saudi Arabia's eastern border to the western border, through which a limited quantity of oil from the Persian Gulf is transported to the Red Sea. From there, it crosses the Suez Canal to reach Europe. But then in 2014, a civil war broke out in Yemen between Shia and Sunni groups, and the Shia Houthis took control of Yemen Yemen's capital, Sana'a. Since Saudi Arabia had been supporting the Sunni group against the Houthis throughout this war, the Houthis directed all their anger towards Saudi Arabia. Now, this area is very close to Saudi Arabia's pipelines, and the Houthi rebels have often threatened to blow up these pipelines. So on one side, there is Iran, which can block the Strait of Hormuz and halt Saudi Arabia's oil exports. And on the other side, there are the Iran-backed Yemeni Houthis in Yemen who can damage the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and then the pipeline, which would have very dangerous consequences for Saudi Arabia. And this is the reason why Saudi Arabia is building its own military base in Djibouti, so that in any threatening situation, they can react immediately through the military. But the Bab el-Mandeb is not only critical for Saudi Arabia, but has also become extremely critical for the European Union. And the reason for this is the Russian-Ukraine war. After the war, Russia cut off all its gas pipelines to Europe, and the only alternative for such a large gas supply for Europe is Qatar, a small country that has the second largest natural gas reserves in the world. But Qatar is quite far from Europe compared to Russia, and it does not have any gas pipeline to Europe. Therefore, Qatar is now investing billions of dollars in LNG technology to cool off the gas, load it into containers, cross the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, cross the Suez Canal, and deliver it to Europe. And this is why European countries are building their military bases in Djibouti to ensure that this route is not blocked by anyone. Similarly, 30% of China's manufacturing exports pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to Europe and North America. So, to keep world trade smooth, it is very important for this strait to remain secure. The Middle Eastern countries want to keep this strait secure so that all their oil and gas can smoothly reach European countries. For China, this strait is important because most of its exports go through this route to other markets, and China's entire economy runs on these exports. The United States has established its military base here to monitor all global trade and prevent China or any other country from gaining complete control over this route. But another reason why so many countries have military bases here is that this whole area is very unstable and dangerous. On one side of this strait is Yemen, which has been suffering from a bloody civil war for the past few years, and on the other side are African countries like Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Malaya, where the law and order situation is very bad. And then there is Somalia, where pirates often attack the containers coming through these trade routes and sometimes even loot these ships. Therefore, all major countries have agreed that they should have military bases in this region to protect world trade from all these threats and keep the flow of trade smooth. And there is no better country than Djibouti to establish a base in this entire area. Djibouti is perhaps the most peaceful country in the entire African region, and if we look closely, Africa is heavily dependent on it because to the southwest of Djibouti is Ethiopia, which has the largest population in all of Africa. However, Ethiopia is landlocked and has no other option for importing or exporting except through Djibouti. Therefore, Djibouti has a significant influence over the entire African continent. Djibouti is an excellent example of how a country can become important and wealthy by simply maintaining its law and order, leveraging its geographic location. If you liked today's video, please follow this account. These are all the sources we consulted for this video. See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care.